okay with that in a moment here.
I'll go ahead and share my desktop.
And I think we can pretty much get started whenever you're ready, Sherry.
Okay, that sounds good. I'm just gonna unfortunately minimize all of your beautiful faces because it'll get in the way of what I'm doing as I'm sharing my screen. But I'll pop that up every once in a while so I can see you all. I want to welcome you to this Keep Teaching Online Help session. We're going to go through some of the things that the administration has asked you to do to get your course content online. You are able to post questions in the chat, and we will kind of respond to them here and there. If we do have time at the end of the session, then we can kind of open it up to a broader Q&A. Okay, so I am Sherry Beck. I'm with the Office of Distance Education and E-Learning, and I have with me Queenie Chow, one of my colleagues. She will be the chat monitor. So again, any questions you have, you can pose them in the chat, and Queenie can either respond to you, or when we pause at certain moments throughout, then Queenie can let me know what those questions are. If I happen to stop making sense, please also put that in the chat so Queenie can tell me to slow down or go over something again.
Yep, that sounds good. So I'll be posting some resources there in the chat. Don't feel like you need to check the chat constantly or even at all or anything like that. So feel free to just give Sherry your full attention. But if you do have any questions, like she said, just put them in the chat. Actually, Molly and I will both be just seeing your questions in there and answering what we can. And then we'll be providing some additional information there, such as I believe we have a syllabus, kind of a mock syllabus that I can upload there for you all to practice with as a file. So, so keep your eye on that every once in a while and you'll see useful stuff in there. Take it away, Sherry.
Yeah, absolutely. And you don't necessarily need to have Carmen up with you right now, but it can be good to move along with us if you would like to look at your own Carmen Space. So a couple of the outcomes, we have some things that we really want to focus on as we're moving through this session. And again, these are the things that the administration has asked you to make sure that you have online. We're calling these the Carmen Key Three, and that is sharing your syllabus, posting whatever resources students need to complete their work. So that might be readings, it could be videos, websites, could also be lectures if you're going to be recording lectures. You'll also want to set up your Carmen gradebook to make sure that students are able to see kind of where they stand with these assignments, if they get their grades in a timely manner. And then using CarmenZoom is the other thing we're going to focus on as a way to communicate with your students in real time. And something we also want to emphasize is to keep in mind that we're only human. This is kind of an unprecedented and very strange situation. A lot of you, if you have been using Carmen, you might not be using it as frequently as some other people. So just be realistic. You want to make it functional, not fancy. Students are going to appreciate more that they can easily navigate the course and find all the material that they need to find, as opposed to seeing something really shiny or really fancy. And then just have compassion for yourself and what you can accomplish. You know, we understand and your students understand that you have other obligations at the same time. You have family obligations, you have other things going on that kind of feed into the fact that this is a very unprecedented situation. So just be kind to yourself, have compassion for yourself. But okay, so I'll go ahead and start with CarmenZoom. I want to talk about that a little bit in general. Then we'll move into talking about CarmenCanvas and getting your course content online. Then we'll switch back to Zoom to talk about setting up a meeting and recording a lecture or recording a class session. So what can you use Zoom before? If you're not really familiar with it, it's just a virtual meeting space where you can set up meetings to connect with your students in real time, or again, you can use it to record lectures. So you might hold office hours through Zoom to allow your students to connect with you. You can hold synchronous class sessions, and we'll get into that a little bit more later. So if you want those class sessions to take the place of an in-person class session, for example, you can do that through Zoom. Asynchronous lecture videos, you can record a lecture and post that to Carmen for your students to access. And then if you have anything like oral exams or homework checks or other things you would typically do in person, that Zoom can kind of take the place of. So the Zoom application, you're going to see some of these icons right now as a participant. However, you will likely see fewer than what appear right here. Something that I want to focus on and call out is this chat button. So we've asked you to, post any questions you have in the chat. If you haven't already seen that button, that's where you can find it. And so I'll go through these icons really quickly. You have the Manage Participants button. So when you are hosting a meeting, you'll have some options that you can do to manage participants. It's not something I'm going to go really in depth into. I do want to keep this kind of a broader level tutorial session. But one thing you can do, which I did for you, is mute all of your participants. So if you don't want if you don't want to hear them kind of rustling around or have them accidentally unmute themselves, that's something you can do and manage participants. If you are having a synchronous class session and maybe you have a large class, you can use this polling feature. So you can set up questions to ask throughout the class period, and then you can kind of launch that polling feature and ask students the questions. They can respond and you can have some sort of student interaction in that manner. Sharing your screen, that is what I'm doing right now. You'll have the option when you click it to share your entire desktop. You can share only a specific application. So if you have a PowerPoint going on in the background, you can just share that PowerPoint. You can just share Chrome or a browser. If you're mainly doing a demonstration in a browser, you have a couple of options there. Record, that is another thing we'll get into a little bit more fully, but you can see that you will have that button. Closed captioning, unfortunately, Zoom doesn't live caption. You can auto caption after you've recorded a session. However, you can designate a student, for example, to type up captions as you're presenting if that is something that you find useful. And then breakout rooms, the second to last little icon over here. If you're doing a live class session and you want students to break up into smaller groups and do some sort of activity and then reconvene as a full class, you can use that breakout rooms option, designate a certain number of rooms and place students into smaller groups. So those are just a few of the features. If you're interested in learning about more features, you can go to keepteaching.osu.edu, and that has links to more resources that go a little bit more in depth. So we'll come back to Zoom, but I do want to switch over to start talking about Carmen. And one thing that I wanted to make sure is that everybody has had the ability so far to go ahead and publish and activate their Carmen Space. So I'll just pause really quickly, open it up to the chat. Is there anybody who has not yet been able to do that?
I have not seen any responses come in.
Okay. Neither have I. Actually opened it up really
Okay.
quick.
So hopefully everybody is good on that front.
Yes. Yeah, and we have a variety of participants. We don't really know everybody's comfort level with Carmen. So this is something, again, that I'm going to give kind of a broader overview on. And then any more specific questions, again, if we have time to open it up to a Q&A, that's where I can address those. Or at the end of the session, I'll give you some resources for where you can find further help. But the Carmen Key Three. So again, these are the 3 things that the administration has asked that you really focus on when you're putting your course content online. So sharing your syllabus, posting the general course content, and setting up your gradebook. So I will go ahead and flip over to do kind of a demonstration and then come back to some of these course content tips. Okay, so the first thing to do is publishing your syllabus. When you are in Carmen, you will see a syllabus tab over here in the navigation bar on the left, and that is where you can go ahead and upload your syllabus. If you've already been using Carmen, it's pretty easy to do, but you would just hit this edit button, and then you get the rich content editor, this box here. You can type in whatever you would like, so maybe download syllabus here. You can highlight that text, go to Files on the right-hand side of the page, click Upload New File, choose the file from your computer. There we go. Make sure you hit upload again here. I've had it where I've done it multiple times. I forget to hit that and then I don't know what happened, but hit that upload button. Click update syllabus. When it saves, you will see students have two options. They can either view the syllabus on the page or they can click download syllabus here to download it to your computer. And if Queenie hasn't already done so, I'm going to have her put this syllabus template in the chat. It's something that you can practice with, putting it into your own Carmen Space. It is something also that our department has developed as kind of best practices in using a syllabus when teaching online. It has some information, letting students know how you're going to be in contact with them, the sort of frequency you're going to be in contact with them, what they can expect in terms of grading. These are things that you can typically address in an in-person class with students, but since we've transitioned over to a virtual learning space, they're things that it can be helpful for a student to have somewhere in writing. So if you want, you are more than welcome to go through this syllabus language or go through the syllabus template, grab any language that you think might be useful and pop it into your own syllabus, if that's something that you think would be helpful for you. But I'll go ahead and go over to modules and show you how to start incorporating things into modules. And I have a couple of tips here for you, again, other best practices. One thing that you want to consider is placing all of your materials in modules. So you do see these other tabs here that say discussions, quizzes, assignments. You can add content using those tabs. However, we suggest that instead of doing that, add any content in modules. It's actually going to duplicate. So when you add something in modules, it will duplicate it in these other tabs. And the reason we suggest that is that if your students aren't, if they don't frequently use Carmen and aren't familiar with navigating it, you can use modules as more of a one-stop shop. So students only really have to go to this page. And the other thing we suggest, again, because of this, is think about how you want to organize your course content. If you've been using Carmen, you might already have some content available to your students here. What we suggest doing is to organize modules by week. That way there's a clear structure. Students know how they need to progress throughout each week of the rest of the class. We also suggest creating something like a weekly reading or materials page. So even though your syllabus likely has a schedule where you list all of these things, just making modules that one-stop shop, again, is going to eliminate the need for students to kind of click around and have to find various things. So an example of what it might look like, I have right here. So I have things clearly labeled by week. I have a readings page. Again, if you have more than just readings, you might label this materials. And then you can see various things that you can have in each week. It's just all clearly laid out. You can also see that it's not very fancy. It's very just utilitarian. It's exactly what students need, not necessarily anything more. So going back to modules, I will show you how to add a module, and it makes it pretty easy. There is this lovely big red plus module button. That is what you click. You can give your module a name, again, if you want to do something like week 11 or week of, whatever the week happens to be. You can add your module. And something to note is that when you add any content to modules, it defaults to an unpublished status. So you do want to make sure that you are clicking publish as you move along so that students can actually see the material that you're putting up there. But once you have the module itself created, then you can add content. And you do that by adding the plus next to the name of the particular module that you're working with. You have a number of things that you can add. You can add quizzes, files, pages, discussions, headers, URLs, or external tools. And I'm going to walk you through adding a couple of different things. The first thing I'm going to do is create a page. And this is where if you want to create an overall materials for the week page, you can do that. So whatever title you would like to give it. Add the item. Again, make sure you publish it. And then when you click on it, that's where you can go in and edit it and add whatever material you need. So if students have already purchased a textbook, you can include that they want to read whatever chapter you have assigned to them. This is also where it's good to include any material that you might have given to students in a class session. So if you had handouts that you had planned on giving students, you can add them similarly to the way that we added the course syllabus. You can upload a PDF or a Word document and that'll pop it into the page. You can also include URLs if you wanted, for example, students to watch a video or navigate over to a website. You can include that here. So you can just type up whatever text you want. Highlight it. Click the little link to URL button. And let me put in a video. You can copy paste the link in here. Insert it, and when you save, you'll see that the link is, the YouTube video is embedded in the page, or students can click this URL and open it up in a new window. And one more tip that I want to give when I'm showing this is if you are including a lot of information on a page, if there's a lot of text, think about using headers over here. So you can highlight text and change it to a particular header. What that does is really help students who might be using a screen reader. It helps a screen reader navigate the page so students can more easily walk through it. Okay, so that is the basics on how to add a page. I'll go ahead and add a couple of other things just so you can see what they look like. So I'm going to add an external URL. I showed you that you can add a URL in a page, but if you want to just link students directly to a website or directly to a YouTube video or other video, you can just add an external URL. And there's kind of a neat feature that Carmen has when you do this. So if I copy paste the URL, put it in, give it a name, publish it. When students click on it, it actually gives them the ability to navigate a website within Carmen. So this is nice that your student doesn't necessarily have to navigate externally. They can, if they want it open in a new window, they can click the link here. Not all websites allow for this. So some websites you'll just see the box is empty here and students can only open it in a new window, but a number of websites do allow for this feature. And it's similar if you add an external link to something like a YouTube video, the YouTube video will show up in here so that you don't have to navigate to the external web page unless a student would like to do that. So those are the basics of adding things to modules. Again, just to reiterate, if you are going to add something like a quiz or a discussion or an assignment, we do suggest that you do so here in modules. So I'm going to pause really briefly before we go over to start talking about the gradebook and see if any questions have come into the chat that Queenie wants me to address.
I have a couple questions here. So one was just how to delete an old syllabus off of a course.
Okay, so if I go to the syllabus page, I can click the edit button and then just highlight it and delete it and then put in whatever I would like and add a new one. Oops. And I saw a question, I opened up the chat really quickly. I saw a question about polling in Zoom. Zoom has this unfortunate feature that it can't share itself. So if I can't show you how to try polling because it won't, my screen just won't share that particular aspect. But let me, if we have time, I'm going to come back to that because I can at least talk about it a little bit, even if I can't quite demo it. So let's bracket that question for now. And if we have time, I'll come back to it.
Yeah, we can definitely talk about that at the end. And there's another one. I created a quiz in Carmen. How do I link it from the module weekly page?
Yes. Okay. So if you go to modules, you can add, just as if you were adding something new, you would click quiz. It would have additional options. If you already have a quiz and you added it to the quiz tab, in addition to new quiz, you would see titles of quizzes that you have already previously created. You would just click the name and then add item, and that would add it to modules. You can do the same thing with an assignment or a discussion. If you've previously added those, but they're not yet in modules, you just drop down to whatever it is, and instead of new, you would click the name of whatever is already in there.
Okay, that's, I was gonna say, that's all the questions I have for now, if you'd like to move on to the second portion.
Yes, absolutely. So now I'm going to go to the gradebook. And one of the main things that I want to mention about this is that there is no option to manually add categories within the gradebook itself. So rather than going to the grades tab and adding there, what you want to do is add to modules anything that can be graded. So that would be a quiz, a discussion, or an assignment, whatever it is that you typically grade. You would add that. So I'm going to show you two types of assignments that you can add just depending on the sort of grades that you normally do. One of the questions that we have encountered so far is, what do you do if you have something like a participation grade? How is that going to work? So that is where an instance where you would use a no submission assignment. So let's say you have a video lecture that you want students to watch and you're going to count that towards a participation grade instead of what you might have used for an attendance grade. So if I create that and go into it and click edit, give it whatever points value you want to give it. If it's out of 100, if it's out of 20, then you would just leave it in no submission assignment. Students aren't physically turning something in, they're just doing something. So you would leave it in no submission and save it. And that is one type of assignment. So I'll go ahead and show you a second type of assignment, which is a submission assignment. So if you had something that a student would typically turn in class, some sort of document, an essay, for example, or completed homework, you can add a Dropbox submission assignment. So I'll do the same thing. Add the assignment. And this time when you go in to edit it, again, give it a points value. You can also, instead of points, you can do pass fail, you can do a letter grade. There are a couple of other options here that you can choose from. But using this drop down, you would click online. And then you have a couple of options. So you can do text entry if you want students to just respond to something very basic. You can use that. They will see a rich content editor box like this, and that's where they can type in their submission. If you want them to go out and find a website and just submit a URL to a website, they can do that. Media recordings, maybe you want them to record some sort of audio of themselves. If you teach a foreign language, for example, and you want them to do a pronunciation assignment, they can submit an audio recording. They can also submit a video recording. So if students are doing something like a presentation or some other multimedia recording that involves video, they can do that here. And then the final one is file uploads. So that's for anything like a PowerPoint, a PDF, a Word document. And something further you can do is restrict upload file types. So I used to teach writing courses, and I did not have a Mac. I had not jumped on the Mac bandwagon at that point. I had a PC. I had many students who uploaded pages, files, which I could not open. So what I ended up doing is restricting file types to Word documents only. You can restrict it to Word documents and PDFs if you want the file to be in a particular format, and that's a really useful feature. You can also have them do all of it. If you want to give them a plethora of options to choose from, you can click whichever of these you would like. So once you're done with that, you can click Save. And then whenever you've added any graded assignments, so once you have all of your quizzes in there, if you have quizzes, all of your discussions, all of your assignments, you'll notice that these things start populating in the gradebook. So you'll start seeing those assignments in the gradebook. And then what you want to think about is how these grades are distributed. So if you have a participation grade, likely there is more than one assignment that is contributing to that grade. If you have a number, for example, of response papers, those together might constitute a particular percentage of the grade. So what you do is then go into the assignments tab, and you want to create groups and put those assignments in groups. So I might have a participation grade group, and I would add that. I might have, again, a response paper group, and I would add that. And once I have all of my categories, I can then drag and drop the particular assignments into whatever applicable category they belong. So my response papers, my participations grades, and then I can delete this little category. To delete, you use these three dots here, drop it down and click delete. And to assign weights, you use the three dots up here at the top, assignment groups weight, weight final grades, and then however you distribute the grades, you can add that in here. So those are the basics of using your gradebook. I'll go ahead and pause again, and Queenie, you can let me know if anything has come into the chat that you think that I should address.
Not yet. I think there were some questions about transcription, but we talked about that.
Okay.
So just to reiterate for anyone who wasn't following the chat, when you hit record, sorry, this is about Zoom. When you hit record on a Zoom session, you get two options. One of them is to save it to your computer, and the other option is to save to the cloud. You want to hit save to the cloud, and that will already auto transcribe that recording for you. So I just wanted to add, it will take a little bit of time after the recording of the session for the video to process, and then a little bit more time after that for the transcription to come through. You'll get an email notification after each one of those steps happens. And I'm talking about in the vicinity of hours, not too much more than that, so not days or anything. So after you record your session, you can come back to the recordings pane in Zoom, maybe give it an hour or two, and everything should be processed and ready to go. And at that point, you can take the link that Zoom gives you and publish that link on your Carmen page for people to click on and watch.
Yes. So I will
let me see if there's anything else here.
Go for it.
I think we're good to go for now. Go ahead.
Okay, then I'll just switch back over to creating and recording Zoom meetings. So let me talk about creating them first, and then we'll talk more about recording them. To create a meeting, you want to log onto your Zoom account, and you can do that by going to zoom.osu.edu. Sign in, and click over to meetings on the left-hand navigation bar. And you'll see you have two options. You have schedule a new meeting. You also have this personal meeting room. So this link is a meeting room that is open at all times. You don't have to schedule it for a specific time. A lot of instructors use this for office hours. That way they don't have to schedule a new meeting and generate a new link every time for office hours. It's really whatever your preference is. The other option is to go ahead and schedule new meetings. So you might do this if you plan on holding a synchronous class session. You might schedule a new meeting rather than using your personal meeting room. To do that, you just click this button. You can give your meeting a name. If you would like, you can give it a description. You can set it to a particular time and a particular duration, and that means that the link that is generated will only be accessible during that time. If you don't want it to be a particular time, maybe instead of using your personal meeting room, you do want to create a session for your class periods, but you only want to use one link for each session, you can drop down, click recurring meeting, and drop down to no fixed time, and that link is going to be open whenever you need it to be open. If you want some extra security, you can require a meeting password that participants will have to enter before they can access the meeting. You can decide whether you want your video on or off. If you do click on, you still have the option at any point, you probably noticed being a participant in this session, you still have the option of turning your video off, so do your participants, even if you have it set to on here. For audio, you have a couple of options. You have telephone, computer, or both. We do recommend having it both. You know, right now we don't really know students' internet connections. A lot of places where they might ordinarily be able to go, like libraries, are closed right now. So at the very least, if a student doesn't have a stable internet connection and they have trouble logging into the actual meeting, they could still hear things by using their telephone. A few more options, you have enable join before host. That just allows a participant to join before the meeting has actually started, before you, I should say, have joined yourself. You can enable that if you don't want that to occur. If you want participants to wait until you're in the room, then you can just unclick this. Mute participants upon entry. You can use that if you don't want to have students or participants hear each other, maybe rustling around, getting settled. Students can then have the option to unmute themselves. However, if you want, you can restrict that when you're in the meeting itself by using that Manage Participants button that I showed you previously. So the waiting room, you'll probably notice that we use that feature at the outset of this session. So you can enable that if you want to physically let students into the room. We had an instructor who taught a foreign language or teaches a foreign language, and she wanted to hold oral exams using Zoom. She was able to enable the waiting room and then let students in one by one. So it was just her and the student while they were doing their examination, and then she could usher that student along and let the next one in. Authenticated users, that just means that you require users to authenticate before accessing the meeting. And then the last one, alternative hosts. If you're co-teaching a class, or if you have a TA, or if you're a TA and you're working with an instructor, you can designate alternative hosts. So the alternative host or the co-host has the same capabilities that you have. They can manage participants, they can mute everybody or unmute everybody. So if you want a co-host or an alternative host, you can add their email addresses here. Once you have everything, you can click Save, and you will see that it generates a link. You can copy that, go back to Modules in Carmen, add a category to whatever module you want to put the link into, and click External URL. You can copy and paste the URL in there, give it a name, and add it. When students click this link, they'll see that it can pop up within Carmen itself. I'm given the option here to either open the client or start from my browser. Students will have the same option. If they use the client, there's more functionality and it's a little bit smoother. But if they have trouble with the client, they can also launch the meeting from within their browser. So Queenie, I'll pause again really quickly to see if there are any questions about setting up a meeting, and then I will move into recording a meeting.
Yes, I believe I addressed all the questions that we had on here. Somebody asked if we could turn the auto transcriptions off. You can, it's in the settings tab. It'll be pretty obvious once you get there. I think I had a question that Molly sent a little bit ago that I might want to read out. Let me scroll back up to that. Give me 1 second. So can you tell us how to have them submit video without having it tied to a specific assignment? I teach a course where they will be doing lots of video and need to tell them how to just send to Carmen.
You can create what is called an editable page. So if you're in modules, I'm not going to go through the whole process, but just to let you know, and that's something that you can contact us about at carmen@osu.edu, or look up resources for on Keep Teaching. But you can create what is called an editable page, and that gives students the ability to add to it. And students can upload videos. They'll have the rich content editor like you see when you create a page, and it gives them the option to upload videos. So if you don't want to tie it to a particular assignment, that is one way to do it. I will note though that since students can be going in there all at once, it is possible that a student might accidentally delete somebody else's video. The other option is to create an assignment that does not count towards the grade. So you can still have them do it in an assignment. Students just won't be able to see each other's in that particular instance.
I have a few other questions here. I already set up meetings for both my courses in Zoom. Mm-hmm. Do I need to redo how I did that?
Not necessarily. I guess it depends on how you've set them up. If there was a reason, if there was something that you did when you set it up that sorry. I guess it's just going to depend. There are different ways to set up meetings. So you can redo them if you think it's better to set them up in a different fashion, but you don't necessarily have to.
Yeah, and I would say definitely to remind everyone to stick to the basics. Don't stress yourself out too much. Zoom is very, very capable of things, just like Carmen is very capable of things. For now, I would say focus on the basics, give yourself some grace as you learn. It's all good. So if you have it set up in a certain way and that works for you, keep it. We're just showing some of the best practices or some of the ways that we know that we like to use it. But I think as you get a little bit more practice with this, you'll also get more comfortable with knowing what your preferences are. And if at some point you decide you want to set things up a little differently, you certainly can. It doesn't ruin anything. So I want to go to another question. So Zoom meetings, class experience, Mark. So I believe that's a question about like synchronous versus asynchronous. So basically, why are we using Zoom is kind of how I'm reading that question. What use is that for us?
Can you repeat? I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Oh, the question is, so Zoom meetings are used for a live class experience?
It can be.
So I would say, yeah. Yeah, so it can be.
Yeah. So let me go ahead and I'll talk about recording meetings because that kind of ties into that question. So you can, if you would like, hold synchronous class sessions for students, similar in the way that you might hold an in-person class where you have the entire class come together within a Zoom meeting. However, if you want, you can record lectures asynchronously and students can access them whenever they would like. There are a couple of considerations. The first consideration is that, students have been asked to leave campus and, go to their permanent homes. That might mean that a student is in a drastically different time zone now. So if you teach an 8 a.m. class and a student had to go home to California, that means they have to log on at 5 a.m. So that is one thing to keep in mind. Also just the fact that if a student has an unreliable internet connection, they might have difficulty logging on to a synchronous meeting. However, you can do both. So let me go ahead and get into some of the best practices here with recording a Zoom meeting. So if a student has trouble logging in, or if it's 5 a.m. their time and they just can't make it to a particular class, if you record a synchronous session, then you're giving that particular student an option to watch it later on their own time. That way they can download it, watch it, whenever they have the time or capability of doing so. So the next point that we would like to make that Queenie actually already touched on is that when you hit record, you'll get two options. It will ask if you would like to record to your desktop or to the cloud. We suggest the cloud. Carmen has a very limited storage capacity, so if you record everything to your desktop and start uploading it, Carmen is not going to like that, and it's going to stop letting you do that. If you record to the cloud, I'll show you in a second, Zoom will give you a link that you can then just pop into Carmen as an external URL, and students can click on that. So you do want to make sure that your recordings are downloadable. I'll show you that feature again in a second. Just going back again to the fact that we don't know what students have set up in terms of internet connections. If you make it downloadable, they can try to find a location where they can access Wi-Fi and download the video and then watch it later from home. Include the meeting links and recordings in Carmen modules so that they can find it easily. And then a second question, or the last point, we've received questions about where do you record? We suggest recording, trying to find a welcoming environment rather than doing something like going to an empty classroom and holding a class session or recording there. You might, you know, if you have a home office, you can record from your home office, you can record from your dining room. If you don't have a good space to record, there are virtual backgrounds. If you kind of hover over your little video icon, you'll see an up arrow, and that allows you to put in a virtual background, kind of like a green screen. It's, I don't know the quality, it kind of looks like CGI from 20 years ago, but it's something, and a lot of people actually find it fun to play around with that. Find a fun screen, you know, to have in your background, and students will definitely appreciate the humor if you go that route. So to go over to recording meetings, I'm going to go back to my Zoom profile, and once you've clicked record, specified to record to the cloud, it will then, as Queenie said, process and upload to your recordings page here. This is what it looks like when you record. It will stay in the cloud for 180 days. After that point, it goes wherever things go when they auto delete. However, you still have the option of downloading it to your computer. So even if you're not using the file from your computer to place into Carmen, you can still keep that file forever. But once it has recorded and processed, you'll click this share button and you'll have a variety of options here. One is publicly. That's a little bit of a misnomer. It doesn't mean that anybody can stumble on your recording and find it and watch it. They do have to have this link in order to do so. It just means that people outside of OSU or people who have not authenticated in Zoom can watch it. If you want to restrict it to only authenticated users, you can do that here. Viewers can download. That is the suggestion we had to go ahead. This is disabled, that is enabled. Go ahead and enable that so students can download the video when they need to. This, like a meeting, you can password protect a video if you just want that extra layer of security. And then once you have everything set up, you can just copy paste this link, close the little share field. And then similar to the way we added the Zoom session, you just add an external URL, pop the URL in there, give it a name, and then students can click on it and they'll see the option to watch it right here in their browser, or they'll see the option to download it and save it to their computer and watch it later. So I will, again, open it back up to the chat. I've seen some questions come in. So Queenie, if there are any that you want me to touch on?
Yeah. The most recent one, I think I've answered a lot of the ones up top. The most recent one, I have dual screens. Will sharing screens in Zoom be any different? Can I still control what I want to share?
Good question. I don't know. So that is a question.
Yeah.
Do you know, Queenie?
Yeah, I was going to say, when you start experimenting with your own room, a lot of these questions that y'all are having are going to be more obvious when you're using your own room. So as the main host of this room, there's a lot of buttons on the bottom. There's not a lot. I don't want to overwhelm you. There's a few more buttons at the bottom of my screen that I see that you won't see. But when you set up your own room, you'll see those buttons on the bottom. And like I said earlier, set up a meeting room and maybe invite a couple colleagues that also want to practice. And just kind of click around a little bit in a very, you know, low risk setting. And when you click on share screen, you'll get several options. You can either share your whole desktop or you can even just share like a single document. So if you had a PowerPoint open, for instance, you can choose to just share that PowerPoint so that no matter what you're doing on your screen, people only see that one window. But as I said, a lot of these things, one of the reasons we chose Zoom was because it is pretty user-friendly. And once you start playing around in it, we think it won't be too difficult for you to figure out what's going on there.
Yeah, and certainly if you
let me see if there's some others.
Yeah, if you have more than one monitor, then, you know, if you only have your PowerPoint on one of those monitors and click just to share that PowerPoint, that way you can use the second monitor for whatever you need to use it for.
Mm-hmm. And then I have a recent question. Can guests post presentations?
In Zoom?
Yes, I believe that's what it means. And yes, the answer is yes. Sorry, I guess I can just answer some of these. Yes, guests can post presentations. So again, as a host and other co-hosts here, other people have the opportunity to share screen. Mm-hmm. So, and as the primary host of this meeting, what you're not seeing on your end that I'm seeing is that I am the primary host of this meeting. Sherry and Molly right now are co-hosts of this meeting. So they're both able to project slides or project their screen with no problems. And also as the main host, I could unshare them if I needed to. So if you have different student groups, let's say you have 4 student groups who all want to at some point show their slides. In a normal situation, group 1, when they're done, they can unshare, and then group 2 then has the capability to share. When you're hosting a meeting, if for some reason there are some issues or somebody forgets to unshare, you can actually unshare them for them, and then somebody else has the right. So like I said, I think some of these things are very in the weeds questions that will make more sense when you do some practice on your own. There's one question that I did address on here that I think is good for everyone else to hear. And that was, sorry, I need to scroll up a little bit. It was centered around, do you set up a meeting if you just want a lecture that students can view?
You do need to have some sort of meeting space, but in that instance, I would suggest using your personal meeting room so you don't have to actually set up a meeting. If you go to your meetings tab and click personal waiting room, you'll see, or personal meeting room, sorry, you'll see your URL, and you can use that one to record a lecture.
Yes. Okay. So another one we have is, how do we have a secondary or co-host to a meeting host? So at the bottom of the screen, when you mouse down there, you'll see something that says participants. When you're a host, it might say manage participants. So you'll see a list of the people in this room, and when you are a host, you actually can click on each one of those people's names who are in here, and you can elevate them to host level as needed.
Yeah, or set it up at the beginning when you set up a meeting is the other place to do that as well.
Yep. So if I wanted, I could choose anybody else in this room right now and elevate them as a co-host or even as host if I wanted to do that. So a lot of functionality there, but yeah, I'll go ahead and let you take it right back there, Sherry.
Okay, well, that's everything that I had. We have about 10 minutes, so I'm going to give you some of these various resources that you can use in the future to kind of get more answers to your questions, but then I'll open it up to a couple of minutes of general Q&A for any of those other questions that came in that we can address for you. But there is the keepteaching.osu.edu website. Hopefully you've had a chance to navigate around that. It's likely where you found out about this help session. We are updating that as new information comes along. So it's definitely good to check back in that to see what else has become available to you. Keep Learning is student facing. It's for your students to help them navigate the rest of the semester. It goes through the tools that they'll be using. It gives them kind of tips and advice. We suggest including this in your Carmen Space. So you might copy paste it as an external URL that you add to modules, or if you send out an announcement to students, you can post it in the announcements as well. The IT service desk here, you should feel free to call them with any questions that you have in the moment that you need an immediate answer to. You can also email carmen@osu.edu. And even though it's Carmen, they're also answering Zoom questions. So they are also the point of contact if you have Zoom questions. We have the Office of Distance Education and E-Learning Resource Center. There are a lot of help guides there on various things that you might be doing within Carmen or various ways you might be using Zoom. So that is a very good repository of resources. And then further workshops. We have further upcoming workshops. You can click on this and, whoa, we need to update that. Okay. But you can click on that and find out what workshops that we have coming up. We have a planning strategies to keep teaching that I want to call out. That one answers a lot of these questions about, is it best for me to do a synchronous Zoom session or asynchronous Zoom session? I've never used a quiz before. What do I do? What's the best way to go about that? So that is definitely a session that you might want to consider joining for any further questions. Okay, Queenie, are there any other really good questions right now in the open Q&A that you would like me to address?
Queenie, you're muted.
Hey, there we go. Yeah, I've got a few questions here. So as long as you're done with the main content of the session, I can kind of go through some of these and we'll address them. Absolutely. Fantastic. Okay, so just a reminder for everyone, I put the Keep Teaching survey, go to osu.edu/keep-teaching survey. When you get a moment, please fill this out after the session just to let us know how we did. These workshops are being held and changed as we go. So if there's anything that you feel like we didn't cover as much, please let us know and we will continue to adjust as we go. So let's see, any tips on managing 2.5-hour courses?
Don't do a 2.5 lecture video, please. That is a really good question. It's a question that's come up. So even if you have, let's say, a 3-credit-hour course and the expectation for a 3-credit-hour course is meeting synchronously 3 times a week, when you're transitioning to online, that consideration can be altered by things like other instructional methods. So if you want students to go watch a video that might take place of part of your lecture, or do a reading that might take place of part of your lecture. Try to keep any lecture videos fairly short just because of attention span. We don't want to have students sit through a 2.5-hour lecture. So you might think about chunking it up, breaking it up, or condensing material however you can.
I've got another question, which I think is pretty good. I downloaded MediaSite and made a practice video. What's the difference between Zoom and MediaSite?
You can use MediaSite. I would say MediaSite is, I don't want to say less user-friendly, but there are more ins and outs of it. Zoom is pretty straightforward. So if you have used MediaSite and you're used to it and you really liked, you did the test, you really liked the way it worked, you certainly can use MediaSite videos instead of Zoom videos.
I have a question here. Will we have access to the recording of this Zoom meeting? You will, that's the plan. So we're recording the session so that after this, we can send this to our comm team and they'll be able to trim it up a little bit and then post it online so that everybody can see that. So let me see if there are any other. You guys did a great job. Thanks for the upbeat presentation. Want to come guest speak at one of my classes?
Sure.
Thanks, we appreciate that. Okay, let me see. Are we sure that Zoom has enough bandwidth for the whole university?
We think so. We have not heard otherwise. I mean, Zoom is obviously aware that this is happening, that a lot of universities, not just OSU, are using Zoom for this purpose. Mm-hmm. And certainly if there is some sort of Zoom crash, that is, hopefully there isn't, but we would definitely alert you to that to let you know.
Yes, it is something they're expecting, and we are being told that it will be able to handle it. So unless it's not, we have to assume that it will. But the question has been asked and considered. So how will students access Zoom meeting telephonically? That's a great question. I'll go ahead and take that because I do that a lot. So once you set up your Zoom meeting or once you have a call set up, under the invitation portion, you'll see all of the credentials. And I think Sherry might be navigating to there. You'll see all the credentials on all the ways on how to log in. So where it says copy the invitation on the right of the link. So if you just want to share the link, that's fine. But if you go to copy meeting invitation, you'll see all different ways that people can connect, including a phone number. They will need the meeting ID a lot of times when they use the phone number. So personally, the thing that I have found the most useful when you share out Zoom information a lot of times is to share the URL, share share the phone number as a backup usually, and then share the meeting ID. So between those three things, people will have everything they need to connect the different ways. I'm assuming that a lot of people aren't going to be connecting through H.323 video conference systems, so don't worry about the IP address, but those three things, meeting ID, URL, phone number, will help people get on. Anything you want to add to that, Sherry?
No, you covered it.
Awesome. Zoom is great for guest speakers. Yes, I agree. Thank you, Scott.
Yeah, absolutely. If you typically have a guest lecturer in your class and they are willing to, record a lecture via Zoom, absolutely, you can bring in a guest speaker.
Mm-hmm. Can students in China access CarmenZoom?
That is a good question. That is something that we are, that is being updated. They were having problems previously. And Queenie, I don't know if you have heard anything more recent, but the last that I saw, you can use it in China. But unfortunately, I don't know if that's changed.
Yeah, I don't either. I think that might have to just be something that you test. I know from previous experience that I have used Zoom with people, I think, in another country before, but again, specifically, I'm not sure about China. So have them test.
Yeah, I shared in the chat, Zoom has a list of restricted countries and regions. So I shared that. It's not listing China, so hopefully it works, but I did share that in there for anyone that wants to see those restricted countries or regions.
Okay.
Thanks,
yeah, there
Molly.
can be a lot of case-by-case situations as well. So that's definitely something where if you have an issue like that, you can talk to your department about what they think might be best. You can also contact carmen@osu.edu if you have, any sorts of questions surrounding that as well.
We have a question. Do you suggest we send the info to students via announcements?
Which info?
I'm guessing that's the Zoom logon info for the class. Is that right? Let me know if that's not right, Mark.
Okay, yeah, I mean, definitely share it in a variety of manners, especially if you want to copy the entire invitation and give students the phone number. You can share that in announcements as well as sharing the link within modules.
Mm-hmm. Yep, and he confirmed that is what he needed.
Okay.
All right, let me know if there's anything else. We'll wait a couple moments before we kind of end things here. If there's anything that you feel like we didn't get to, or if there's anything after this that kind of comes to mind, don't feel like you're stuck. So the Keep Teaching website, we have a ton of great resources there. We have many, many times the amount of phone support folks than we usually have to make sure we are available to be taking your calls and emails. So if you remember nothing else, remember the link keepteaching.osu.edu for the resources and for the phone number and emails to use to get to us. We're happy to help.
Yeah, and so Queenie said that she put the survey in the chat. We would absolutely love for you to go ahead and take that and give us, some feedback about this session so that we can modify it if we need to for future sessions. We also really appreciate, your time coming to this session, really being there for your students. So thank you, and again, just reach out to us if you have other questions that we can help you answer.
And we had one more question that came through.
Yeah.
A couple actually. Does making a video downloadable allow a student to upload it to YouTube or use it in other unauthorized ways?
Unfortunately, yes. And this is where we kind of have to decide, we want to trust our students. So we want to give our students the capability of being able to access a file by downloading it. However, yes, they do have the ability to take that file and distribute it in a manner that you might not like them to.
I would let you know that if that's the thing you're worried about, to be quite honest, even if you made it not downloadable, if somebody really wants to rip it off the screen, they can.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of trust there that I think we're just going to have. So whatever is most comfortable for you, do what you think is most comfortable. Obviously, there are levels of security, not just yes or no. But yeah, if somebody really wanted to, there's free programs out there that you can rip any video off of a computer that can be seen. And they could do that anyway. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
that probably doesn't comfort you, but I want to
Yeah.
be very realistic about the technology and capabilities of it. So that said, I think I have one other question. It was mentioned about modules automatically duplicating other features like discussions, quizzes. What does that mean?
So and I used to do this when I first started teaching online. So you can add assignments, new assignments in the assignments tab. You can add new quizzes in the quizzes tab or new discussions in the discussions tab. However, that does not automatically put them into modules. If you add a discussion in the discussion tab, you then need to go to modules and also upload it there where I showed before. You would have to click whatever it is, and then the name would appear down here and you would click on it. However, if you add something in modules, it does automatically add it to the other tab. So I added a couple of assignments in modules. It also automatically added them in assignments. So it just doesn't work in the reverse. And again, that's why we just suggest adding things in modules instead of going to these other tabs.
I think that's all I see for now.
Okay, perfect. Well, again, thank you everyone and have a good day.
Bye. Thank you.